Is it a turn-off for a man to cry in front of his woman? So I have been suffering anxiety and minor panic attacks on and off for a few years and sometimes have problems with depression. However, in the bigger scheme of things it's normally something I can handle as part of life. But last night after having a panic episode one put my head on my partner's lap while watching TV and something broke in me and I just broke down into tears and cried for about 5 to 10 million. In the moment she was amazing and I felt so lucky to have her to support me. But now I am worried that I shouldn't have cried in front of her and I feel really embarrassed. Like, will I be less attractive as a man after breaking like that? What do you think? Well, depends on the woman. A good well-adjusted woman who loves you, it should be completely okay. My ex? Nah son. I fell in love with my boyfriend more when he cried in front of me. He is so comfortable in his masculinity that he isn't afraid to be vulnerable and it is so beautiful. If you're genuinely overwhelmed by emotions then cry. If your significant other thinks it's a turn-off then they're not worth the time or the vulnerability. The only time tears are a turn-off is if it's fake. My ex liked to guilt-trip me with his sadness. That's gross and shouldn't be tolerated. She sounds like she really cares. Crying is good because it releases all that built-up pressure and emotion. Just remember to stay hydrated so you don't get that post-cry headache. And maybe a hot drink to clear your sinuses after. See, I'm not saying it's wrong in any way, but it really depends on the girl and the degree of comfort you've with each other. WTF no. When anyone cries in front of me I feel great because it means they trust me enough to be vulnerable and our relationship is stronger. Not at all. Speaking as a woman who is in her third relationship. All my relationships had one thing in common: the guys never cried. In my first two they never even got emotional and it bothered me big time. Emotion to me means you are human and if my boyfriend ever breaks down with me I feel like he feels comfortable with me and I would happily comfort him. Now I have to put a disclaimer. I know a girl whose boyfriend cries when seeing her, cause she is so beautiful. In their 10 months of being together he cried more than 12 times. That to me is weird and too much, but someone crying because they just need a shoulder to cry every once in a while is fine to me. Every relationship I've been in, if I show any vulnerability, the relationship dynamic will change. Maybe I've just dated a lot of turds, but as soon as I show a weakness I have been treated as significantly less of a man. Men are expected not to show weakness. Which sucks, because it would be nice to have a woman I could open up to, but it's happened to me too many times. Keep that shit bottled up and share with a good buddy. It shouldn't be you're human, and allowed to have emotions. Use it as a litmus test. You don't want to share your life with someone who sees it as a turn-off. My answer changes if you have a good cry session, like, every 45 minutes. Hey. But otherwise, no. You should never feel ashamed to show your feelings. I'm glad you are comfortable enough to open up and feel your feelings in front of her. Don't overthink it, my dude. Not at all. I honestly worry about my boyfriend when I can tell he's upset and doesn't do anything about it. It's nice to know that your partner isn't an emotionless robot. Men are allowed to have feelings, it's normal. A lot of people are going to feed you lines about how it's okay to cry in front of your woman and how it's a good thing to express your emotions and all that pablum. The litmus test will be her behavior. If sex dries up following your emotional display, you'll know how she really feels about it. Never listen to what people say, watch what they do. If nothing about her affection towards you changes, then you haven't made a mistake. Not at all, but you should communicate your concerns with your partner, so that they can reassure and validate how you're feeling so you feel even more safe in your relationship with your emotions. God, I'd be terrified if my boyfriend never cried in front of me. I'd be so afraid that he doesn't trust me enough to feel like he can let go. It's good to cry. Don't stop yourself from crying. Men are far less attractive to me if I see them actively trying to hold back normal human emotions. I want a partner, a lover, a friend. Not a robot, lol. Talk to your partner. Discuss your emotions. Cry together. And then build each other up. Communicate your needs, fears, concerns, desires. Some women will say it's okay to cry, but they wouldn't realize that they'll subconsciously see them as weak now. The fact that a man can feel guilty for sharing his emotions with his life partner is proof toxic masculinity is still an issue. Surely the point of a relationship is to support and care for each other. I personally think it's so sexy when a man cries, not the physical act itself, but the ability for him to be vulnerable and open with me. The rawness of that emotion is so beautiful to share with someone. When a man cries openly, I know he's so strong. And not only is he in tune with his emotions, he's in tune with his pride, and can look past his pride to display how he's feeling. The privacy and intimacy of letting someone else in times of pain or sadness is so deep, it would make me feel like the closest person in the world to a guy if he opened himself up like that. And closeness is not a turn-off, baby. Crying is an expression of emotion. If you are with a girl who can't accept that and call you weak, move on. I mean, if we are talking about you accidentally stubbing your toe and you start crying like a newborn, I'd say yes. But if you are just showing emotion and letting it out, I don't see why that would be a turn-off for any woman you'd want to continue a relationship with. Crying is a great release emotionally, and for many, it's a cleansing experience. Never. As with everything, it depends on the context. How, when, where and why. As you described it, either, you're in the all clear, as your partner understands and supports you, or she's a boss who isn't worth a second of your time anyways. Definitely not. The first time my ex cried with me, it brought us closer more than anything. Speak to her, I'm sure she'll be able to reassure you. Definitely not. When I love a man and I see him cry, it breaks my heart. In my experience, your partner values you honestly expressing your feelings in an open and vulnerable way. If they don't, they're likely a jerk. If my husband cries, I'm not thinking about if I'm turned on or not. I'm supportive. I hug him. Stroke his hair. Hold his hand. Anything he needs, I'll do. He would do that for me, so of course I'll be his support whenever he wants. I love him, and sometimes every person just needs to cry. My partner cries in front of me because I am his safe person. I love him. I would never think less of him for showing emotion. I'm also teaching my son that it's okay to be emotional. I think it's so unhealthy to not show emotion. I mean, you don't exist to be attractive. Feel your feelings, be human. If someone rejects you over that, it's not a person you want around. Man here. I asked this question at work as I work with like 30 women. They all said the same thing. All of them. They said they thought a man that could cry is sexy. Unless it's ugly crying. Or they cry too much. Or too often. Really, any crying where a lot of snot is involved is a problem. Then it's a turn-off. Not everything has to be a win or lose. Being able to be vulnerable with somebody is extremely difficult sometimes, and huge if you can accomplish it. If she's the right kind of person, she'll appreciate that. If she isn't, is she really right for you? Would you want to have to hide that facet of your emotions? The world would be a much better place if more men allowed themselves to feel vulnerable and weak sometimes. Just be who you are and hopefully you find the person that works with. Sounds like she did pretty well. Thank her for that. Crying isn't a turn-off no matter the gender. The frequency, though, can be. If you're crying every day, that's going to be a problem. Maybe if it happened on like a first date it would feel weird, but if you've been together for a while it's okay. Honestly, does not bother me. When he cries, I cry too. Not at all. My boyfriend and I both suffer from anxiety and depression. We know what to do to bring each other back from those dark places. We help each other. It probably helps a lot that we both understand it and empathize with one another. If your woman is a good person, she won't see your crying as anything but an indicator that you are a human being. You're 100% fine, and I'm glad you have someone to support you during a hard time. Are there women who'd be turned off by that? Yes, but these are sexist, machismo-minded women you don't need to be with. It makes me sick when I see women upholding bullshit like that. You're a good dude, don't worry. Actually, you are more of a man if you are willing to show your vulnerability to someone you love. If this were something that happened a lot, you might have cause for concern. But being willing to let her share your burden is a tremendous sign of love and trust. Someday she will need you to be there for her in the same way. Being able to let go of that anxiety with someone who cares is one of the best ways to heal. I hope the two of you can keep and build on that connection. Sounds like you're made for each other. Once in a while crying, no problem. Every day crying, big problem. I have an ex who cried at the drop of a hat. At first, I thought, he's so sensitive. A man in touch with his feelings. The 745th time, I was more, this shit again. Man up. Not a turn off at all. It's a normal expression of emotion and it sounds as though you're struggling, so it's certainly called a reasonable thing to do, but I think you need to talk to her about how you're feeling. Not at all. The vulnerability can be attractive and being honest with one another is essential to a relationship. Never, ever be ashamed to cry, regardless of gender and regardless of who it's in front of. Well, maybe don't do it in a job interview lol. It bothers me that this is still something men struggle with or worry about. Sad face. Not gonna lie, when my husband cries my first instinct is to hold him tight and sort of tuck his head under my chin. If her first instinct isn't to comfort you when you've done nothing wrong, that's on her being less of a woman, not you being less of a man. Only if she is sexist or toxic. No, it is not a turn-off. Think of all those videos of colorblind men who cry seeing colors for the first time. Everybody loves them, not one person ever had a negative comment about them and they are just all simply adorable. If I had my man cry in front of me, IDK how to describe it. I wouldn't enjoy it, but I mean I'd be happy that he feels close enough to be vulnerable with me. If girls can be crybabies, so can men. We all need to let it out from time to time. No. If she cares about you and your well-being, it will be fine. If she cares more about the appearance of who she thinks you are, then it might be an issue. But honestly, if that's all she cared about, she wouldn't be worth sticking around for. Seeing my ex cry always broke my heart and I just wanted to be there for him. Him crying in front of me was not what ended the relationship. If anything, it made me feel like we were closer and that he trusted me. As a woman, it means a lot when a man feels comfortable enough to cry or be open with me. You shouldn't be worried. If she's a good woman, she'll feel the same. If she needs toxic masculinity from her partner, then be glad you've found out now. Not at all. In fact, as someone who also struggles with anxiety, it would make me feel even more comfortable with my partner if he was so open with those emotions. No, 100% no, okay, maybe 90% no and 10% yes, but only because there's that one time someone cries for something ridiculously stupid. Like their favorite show getting cancelled, the TV breaks, that kinda stupid. But the other 90% shows them actually to be human, and can sometimes be a turn-on. As a mother, seeing my fella holding his daughter, whilst tearing up was the biggest moment ever. He cries a lot when she's being super cute. She broke him in a good way. So that's my answer. Definitely not a turn-off emo. I respected my significant other crying in front of me, and it was always while talking about his past trauma, and he always got sympathy from me. Anytime I've ever cried in front of him, I have gotten a speech about him hating women's tears and that he will talk to me when I can talk without doing that. Face with rolling eyes. Hey, my boyfriend honestly cries more often than I do. I personally love that he's not ashamed to show his emotions and doesn't feel the dumb stigma that men shouldn't cry. Would you consider it a turn off if your girlfriend cried in your lap?